Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of Med Speaks. Today, I'm joined with a very special guest, Dr. Archit.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Archit. I'm a general surgeon who's currently practicing in Navi Mumbai, and I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah,
So
we're
let's
very
get
grateful
started.
that you're on today. So, without any further ado, let's get into the
Yeah.
first question. So, the first question is a pretty basic question. Where did you do high school, like your 9th to 12th standard?
Okay. So the answer to that is pretty simple. I did my high school from DPS Navi Mumbai, and we were only the second batch from the school. So a lot of emphasis was put on us, and we were trained to be very competitive when it came to the exams, etc.
Okay,
So
okay.
yeah, standard CBSE school.
That I mean, I'd say that's a upside because in India it's very competitive becoming a doctor. And
Particularly for NEET, I think CBSE might be a slightly better. It's sort of the exam is sort of geared towards people from CBSE.
okay.
But anyway, yeah.
Then the next one is when did you decide, I want to become a practitioner, I want to become a doctor?
So, well, the answer to that actually is probably from my childhood. I have my mother's older brother who was a pathologist, and he used to, from a very young age, he used to like taking me to his lab, and so I would see specimens under the microscope or gross specimens which had been preserved, and he was very very passionate about teaching, and I think I caught some of that from him. So that the uh, the interest in medicine, I think, probably came from there, and I
Oh,
sort of
okay.
carried that forward.
Was he your kind of guider or mentor throughout your medical career?
Yeah, he actually was. So in fact, he was practicing in the army, and I had always wanted to get into the army and study medicine just like he did. It didn't end up working out, but he was a person who I used to call up and ask for advice and all very very often.
Okay, okay. That's pretty cool. Okay, so
Yeah.
then which institution did you study medicine?
So I did my undergraduation from Manipal University. So Kasturba Medical College, Manipal. I actually got through on a full scholarship and managed to maintain that till my final year. Then I did my post graduation as an MS in general surgery from Bangalore Medical College and Research Institute. So,
Okay.
which I mean, pretty obvious, but it's in Bangalore. So yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay, then so that this question kind of ties into the previous one. In the country you
Right.
studied, which now we know it's India, what was the
Yeah.
process of becoming the doctor? The exams, the steps, the years, like that.
All right. So this is going to be a very long answer. So, get ready for it.
Grab your
So
popcorn.
immediately, yeah, grab your popcorn, drinks, whatever you want. So the thing is, when I gave the exam, so this was 2009. I just finished my 12th. We had we had a slightly different system to what it is right now. So in my time, it was called the All India Pre-Medical Test, or the AIPMT. Now that gave you admission to all the government colleges in the country. Okay, but it excluded private colleges, and it excluded what we call the central institutes, which is AIMS and JIPMER in Pondicherry. So
Okay.
all of these had their own exams. So I gave the AIPMT and I gave the Manipal exam, and I did well in the Manipal entrance. So I ended up taking that. Now, once I got into MBBS, it's a 4.5 plus 1 year course. Now, the 4.5 comes from your the duration of the academic course, and the 1 year is the internship. And that 4.5 is divided into first MBBS, second MBBS, and third MBBS. At the end of each of these, you give a final exam. And third is divided into Part A and Part B. Post that, I gave the NEET PG, which again is an all India competitive exam.
Mm-hmm.
And on the basis of that, you get admission into your specialty.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of those 3 years, so your MS or your MD usually is a course which is 3 years long.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of those 3 years, you just have to give one final exam, and then you get your degree.
Okay, so you did the MS, right? Because you studied general surgery.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And could you go into kind of the depth in a little bit more of depth as to how in India, it is more competitive because I know now like the AIPM doesn't exist. I know it's NEET, and I
Correct,
know
correct.
it's a
Yeah,
generalized test for all colleges, whether it's private, government, this, that. So could you speak a
correct.
bit more about that?
Yeah, yeah. So that's actually a really good question, man, because it's been coming more and more into the forefront these days about how it disadvantages certain people. But I'm not going to get into that.
Mhm.
Basically, I think a couple of years after I gave the exam, they decided to bring all of the seats under a single exam. So that exam was called the NEET. So all of your private and government institutes fall under one, like one umbrella when it comes to entrances. Now that exam is just one which is called NEET undergraduate.
Mhm.
Uh, the only institutes which are exempt from this are again your private, are your central institutes. So your central
Okay.
institutes are AIMS and JIPMER. These have their own entrance exam in order to get admission for MBBS.
Okay. Okay, that's interesting because I know abroad it's everything's application based.
Yeah,
Here it's yeah.
it's completely competitive exam based in India. I think at no point up, maybe apart from when you're applying for fellowships,
Mhm.
does the process differ a little bit. In
Mhm. And
fact,
I
I
know,
am studying at
yeah,
my level after my post graduation. I'm still studying for another competitive exam to do super specialty.
yeah.
So it's the way it is.
And I think it's not just in medicine, like even for engineering, they have the JEE, the JEE advanced if you do well in the main. So
Right.
it's in India specifically for anyone who wants to study in India, just make sure you're competitive because you're gonna be fighting for a small number of seats against a
Yeah,
large number of
absolutely.
people.
Absolutely. And make sure you are capable of giving a large amount of time for the process of preparation.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
And so I spoke a little bit about seats just in the previous sentence. I know when I was researching to studying medicine in India specifically, I saw that the seat kind of thing is existing. So what could you
Yeah.
explain a little more about that?
Sure. So, I'll give you an overall idea of it. Now, the fact of the matter is that every year it changes a little bit. So seats are basically just a number of places available for admission. So
Mhm.
it's called seats for short. Now each institution has a certain number which has to be recognized by the government. Okay, that number keeps going up and down on the basis of how much reservation is there. For example, if they apply for new seats. Now the exact number nobody knows until the government, the body which conducts the NEET, okay, the undergraduate exam,
Mhm.
releases what's called a seat matrix.
Mhm.
Now that usually happens either just before or just after the exam. So
Mhm.
once they release the seat matrix, you have an idea about which institutions have how many seats
Mhm.
or how many places available. When you get your result for the NEET, okay, the NEET undergraduate, and you get your seat matrix, on the basis of that, you have to participate in something that's called counseling.
Mhm.
Now, the term counseling is very misleading. It doesn't help you with your life at all. It makes your life a hell of a lot more complicated. But the basic idea of it is this. So it's you have to input it's an online based thing now. You have to input your order of preference for institutions
Okay.
in that. Now, so let's say you want to look at K in Bombay. Okay, let's say you want to
Okay.
look at KEM, you
Mhm.
want to look at Sion, and you want to look at Nayar Hospital.
Mhm.
Now, these three are the ones you're considering. So you just put these three in order.
Mhm.
So the way it works is if let's say rank number one starts the counseling process,
Mhm.
obviously because he's rank number one, everything is open to him. So he'll get whatever is his first option, he gets his first option. Now
Oh.
let's say there are 200 seats in KEM, okay, and the first 200 people get it. The person who's 201 also wants KEM but doesn't get it. So the algorithm will then look at his second option. So if his second option is, let's say, Nayar Hospital, he'll get Nayar Hospital if there are vacancies there. And that's how it
Okay.
goes.
Okay.
So at the end of first round of counseling, you get a result wherein everybody gets allotted a particular place. Okay. Then you have to report to that college. You have to give them your documents. And from there, you can decide whether, now let's say you're unhappy. So rank number 201 is not happy because
Mhm.
he wanted KEM. He ended up in Nayar. He
Mhm.
wants to try again. So that he can then participate in what's called the second round of counseling.
Okay.
So when you participate in that, you get people who want to change, etc. Some people leave seats because they get somewhere else. Like let's say they get into AIIMS, so they leave those seats. Those seats will get vacant.
Okay.
So people in the second round of counseling, you again input your preferences in the same order, and then you get, at the end of that, you have to join whatever you get.
Okay.
That's how
And
it works.
usually there's only 2 rounds. There's no more than that, right?
Yeah, there is a third round is sort of optional.
Okay.
It certain years there is a third round if there are a lot of vacancies. Certain years don't have a third round.
Okay. Okay. And then after you get in, then you do your 4 years of MBBS, right? Can you kind of break down as you said, there's
Yeah,
MBBS 1, 2, and 3. So could you break down what goes on in them?
absolutely. So MBBS 1 is what they call basic life sciences. So that is anatomy, which is a study of the structure of the body. So for example, bones, muscles, nerves, how they how they physically course from one end to another.
Mm-hmm.
That's anatomy. Physiology is a study of how the body works.
Okay.
So, for example, how nerve impulses are propagated, how digestion happens, how
Uh-huh.
hormones act from one point to another. And this all happens. Physiology is a study of the normal human body. There is
Right.
nothing abnormal in it. Okay. Then you come to biochemistry. Biochemistry is the study of biochemical molecules. So you have proteins, amino acids forming proteins, how it happens, how glucose gets metabolized, things
Okay.
like that. At the end of first MBBS, you have an exam, which is
Mm-hmm.
on these 3 subjects.
Mm-hmm.
In order to progress further, you have to pass the exam. Otherwise, you get failed and you repeat the exam in 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah. Then second MBBS is 1.5 years. So I told you it's 4.5, right? So
Yeah.
that
So the
extra
half
half year
thing.
comes over here. So in this 4.5, you have 4 subjects. It is pathology, which is the study of what happens, at a molecular level, what happens when things go wrong with the body. So it's a molecular study of, for example, what causes cancer to form,
Mm-hmm.
or what causes inflammation to occur, why fever happens. Things like that are all explained in pathology.
Okay.
Then you have pharmacology, which is a study of drugs,
Right.
microbiology, which is a study of microbes, and forensic medicine, which is sort of the odd one out.
Mm-hmm.
It's not very, it sounds very cool, and but it sort of doesn't fit in with the rest of it, but we still study
Okay.
it.
Okay.
So all of your fingerprinting and
Mhm.
genomic analysis and all come under that.
Okay.
So that's 1.5 years. At the end of 1.5 years, you give an exam on these 4 subjects. Again,
Okay.
you pass it, great. You get to progress. Fail it, you get held back.
Okay.
Then you have third MBBS. Now, from second MBBS onwards, first MBBS, you're just attending lectures and going to practicals. So the way you guys have physics practicals and chemistry practicals,
Yeah.
the anatomy, biochemistry, physiology practicals are very similar.
Okay.
Okay, but when it comes to second year onwards, you start going to the hospital. You actually start interacting with patients.
Right.
You start with a basic process of what we call case taking, which is you take a history of the patient. You ask them how long have they had so and so problem for, uh,
Okay.
you know, and you get an idea of the basics of how to examine patients, etc. Third MBBS onwards, you have clinical subjects. Okay, so third MBBS is divided into part A and part B.
Okay.
Part A is 3 subjects, which is ENT, which is ear, nose, and throat,
Right.
ophthalmology, which is the study of the eye, and something that you call community medicine or preventive and social medicine in some
Okay.
cases. It is a study of how to use the principles of community, like community welfare to
Right.
prevent diseases from happening.
Okay.
Okay, and particularly it deals a lot with how policy helps in bettering health in a
Okay.
country.
So it's
Okay.
like kind of controlling disease outbreak.
Yes, that is one part of it. It's very, very widespread. I mean, community medicine we used to learn things like, what is the dimension of pores in a mosquito net for it to be effective in preventing malaria. And
Oh.
you used to learn about things like how the Spanish flu propagated and, in 1918, and what are the factors responsible for it. So it's,
Okay.
again, very widespread.
Okay.
Then you come to final MBBS. I mean, sorry. Then you come to third MBBS part 2,
Part B, right?
which in part B, which is in slang terms is called final MBBS. So
Okay.
that is where you deal with the big subjects. You deal with general medicine, general
Okay.
surgery, obstetrics and gynecology, and pediatrics, along with things like orthopedics. So the smaller ones are orthopedics, anesthesia, dermatology, which is skin, psychiatry, and yeah. And you get a small idea of the super specialty subjects as well.
Okay.
At the end of final MBBS, again, give an exam on these 4 subjects, pass, you get a provisional medical registration, and you're allowed to practice as an intern. And basically, the 1 year, once you get you pass your final MBBS, get your provisional registration, you start your internship. Your internship is basically 1 year where you keep moving from department to department to department. All the major departments in the hospital, the clinical ones, you get to cover. You get to understand how, interacting with patients works, how the hospital runs, how, for example, in surgery, you'll get an idea about how to work up a patient in order for them to undergo surgery, how to how to manage a patient after the surgery and, they're recovering from it. So things like that. You basically rotate through all of the departments. You don't spend more than a month and a half over there.
Okay.
And you assist in everything at that point. So that it works well both ways. The hospital gets somebody who's like this all-purpose character, who can be present at all times and does the small things that other people don't have time for. And you get an idea of what you might be interested in and what you might not be interested in.
Okay.
So, for example, at the end of my internship, I was 100% sure I did not want obstetrics and gynecology. I think that's the biggest thing it did for me. So,
cancel that one out.
Absolutely. That went out the window.
Okay. And you were saying, so in internships, a lot of people like think it's a lot of work and this and that. Would you agree with that, or would you say the other postgrad or MBBS is harder?
No. So when it comes to actual work and, like actual amount of time that you're spending, the actual mental stress of it, I don't think that, I think postgraduate beats everything by a mile.
Okay.
Because in your post-graduation, you're actually responsible, like personally responsible for the patients who are admitted under you. Yes, there are people above you who take decisions, etc., etc. But the nitty-gritty, the small, this one, if a patient says he has pain, for example, you will be the one who's responsible for administering something, or for at least writing the order for administering a painkiller, for example. So you're personally responsible for their well-being at that point. And it is extremely mentally taxing. I don't think anything beats post-graduation. Yeah, absolutely. Internship, at least in my case, it depended a lot on which department you were in. So OBG, which I ruled out almost immediately, I used to get up, reach the hospital at 6:30 in the morning, and I would get done only by 10:30, 11 at night. So, but there were other times when I'd get done by maybe 4 or 5 in the evening, and the rest of the time would be free. So internship sort of works according to the department.
Okay. And you were saying that a lot of the hospitals get a plus point because they get an all-rounder, but is it like they sometimes make you do the dirty work because they don't want to?
It is absolutely that you get to do the dirty work that other people don't want to. And it's not just dirty work. It's more like insignificant work, like for example, take this patient to this other department to show him. That's something that the interns do. Or show up in the morning, check all the blood pressures, note it down, check all the temperatures, check all the, the pulse rate for all the patients, note it in the file. That's something that the interns used to do. Or collect this report or draw this blood sample and then take it to the lab to get it tested. That's the kind of stuff that interns used to do.
Okay. So
it's not specialized work. It's work that it's essential work, but it's not specialized to a particular department. Those skills sort of transfer from one department to another.
Okay. So you said you almost ruled out OBG or obstetrics immediately. What were some of the fields you actually really enjoyed doing? Like the time you spent in those months you really enjoyed?
Oh, that's a damn good question. Okay, so the ones that I really liked happened to be most of the surgical branches. I really liked orthopedic surgery. I had a decent time in general surgery as well. I actually really liked anesthesia because I thought because anesthesia was a subject where you would study it and then go and you could implement whatever theory you had studied almost immediately.
Right, the application.
The applications almost is fairly quick. Even as an intern, it helped me understand what was happening just when I read it in mind.
Okay.
I mean, I'm a surgeon, so we're not allowed to say that, anesthesia is. Other surgeons will not agree if I say that anesthesia is a fascinating subject, but I genuinely think it's very fascinating.
You were saying that in the operation theater, there's a big rivalry between the.
There's a huge rivalry between anesthesiologists and surgeons
Uh,
because anesthesia is a little like being a pilot. It's the takeoff and the landings which are the tough part. It's the
mhm.
induction and the taking out of anesthesia which are the very tough part for them. In between, they're not as stressed, and in between is when we are the most stressed.
Right.
So, and they constantly think that we operate on people without without taking care of them properly, and we constantly think that they only exist to cancel surgeries which we have scheduled. So
Right.
that
Right.
rivalry has been going on for eternity.
Okay, well, for everyone watching, actually want to be an anesthesiologist. I should get my boxing gloves ready for any rivalries I might have.
No, you don't need to get boxing gloves ready. All of the drugs which can knock us out without us without you having to lift a finger at all.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that.
Okay. Now, you said we were on the topic of internship. So what comes after that?
So after internship, you usually give right again. I gave the NEET PG, which I think is the exam which is there right now as well.
Okay.
In addition, again, central institutes have discretion to offer their own exams.
Mhm.
So you have AIMS, JIPMER, and you have PGI, which is Postgraduate Institute of Medical Education and Research. That's in
Okay.
Chandigarh. They
Okay.
have their own exams, which are held separately,
Okay.
and you go and give them. Now,
Okay.
it's again competitive exam. In this particular case, unlike your MBBS, when you give the NEET PG and you participate in counseling for that, in addition to the institute that you want to go to, you have to specify the course that you want.
Oh.
Yeah. So, for example, if you can say, I want general surgery in KEM, but I also want anesthesia in Nair.
Oh, okay.
So it becomes that much more complicated. You have to think about what you want, where you want it, what
Right.
courses, what branches you're likely to get, etc., etc.
Okay. So if you're
So
willing
that
to share, can you tell us
yeah,
where you applied for which branch?
I mostly stuck to general surgery. To be honest,
Okay.
I
Okay.
I had an option between coming to Bombay and going to Bangalore, and I had some personal stuff going on at home because of which I chose Bangalore.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's why I did.
Right. So then, so the NEET PG is a you saying very competitive exam, which again goes to prove that
Horribly.
India is fully competitive. And are the seats in PG harder or easier than MBBS?
Um, I would say they're harder.
Oh,
They're harder because it doesn't matter what the absolute number are. You're looking at, so for example, if you want general surgery, you're looking at only general surgery seats.
oh yeah.
And they are not very many compared to the number of people who are applying, which quite frankly is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So at least in India, what happens is the seats keep increasing at all levels, but
Mhm.
they're never proportional to each other. So you'll have
Okay.
a huge increase in MBBS seats, but the increase in postgraduate seats will take some more time.
Okay.
It'll take it'll take more time to increase in proportion. So what ends
Okay.
up happening is, because it's like a pyramid, you have a lot of people gathering at the bottom who are not able to make it to the next step.
Oh
So
yeah.
each stage it becomes much more competitive.
Right. Because the selection process and more people get eliminated. So there's at
Yeah,
the end.
exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
just the way you broke down the MBBS structure, which was very informative, could you tell us again, breaking down the how many 4 years of PG it is, right?
It's 3 years of PG, and
Okay.
sadly, there is no breakdown which exists.
Oh,
MBBS is very structured because you are going to lectures. The course itself sort of divides your time. So you have lectures in the morning, you have practicals in the afternoon, you have clinics in the evening. That's usually how it works.
okay.
In When you come to your post graduation, it's not like that. It's sort of everything depends on the department you're in. If they want to hold classes, or if they want to hold journal discussions, or they want to hold case presentations, for example. So you
Right.
have to take, as a postgraduate, you go and find an interesting case, you read up about it, about the treatment, about how to follow up, and then you present it in front of everybody, your entire department, and they get to
Oh,
critique you.
okay.
That would happen about once a week. The rest of the time you're just working.
Hmm.
the difference that exists between first year, second year, and third year is usually that in second year people go rotate through their super specialty departments.
Okay.
So for example, when I was in general surgery, we got one month each at neurosurgery, at plastic surgery, at pediatric surgery, at cardiothoracic surgery, at urology, and what else am I missing? At oncosurgery,
Okay. Right.
surgical oncology. So that is the only sort of break that you get. And the other differences between first year, second year, and final year is at least in surgery, it's the complexity of procedures that you're allowed to do. So for example, you say first years will do this, second years will do slightly more complicated things, third years will do even more complicated things. So that's the only difference that exists.
Right. So
There are no
it's like,
exams.
yeah.
Sorry, there are no exams that stop you from going from first year to second year or second year to third year.
Mhm.
There's only one final exam at the end of third year, which you have to pass in order to get your postgraduate degree.
Okay. So it's in a sense, theoretically, it's easier than MBBS, but the amount of hours you have to put in it's much more,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Okay.
yes, absolutely.
And so out of what I've heard, I think PG is a lot more research based and hours put in, right? Because you were saying you have to present your research or findings to the class, right?
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
And there's usually a requirement in your post graduation to present one paper at a regional conference, to
Okay.
get another paper published, and to have one clinical poster discussion at a regional conference.
Okay. So it is okay.
So there is an emphasis on research as well. Yes.
I think that's good, because at that stage you should be having to like be able to
Yeah.
find the
Absolutely.
resources for this and that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And if nothing else, it's much better to do it in a place where you have somebody who can guide you. You know, your seniors, your second year or your third years when you're in first year can tell you that this is the process by which you get a paper published, or this is the process by which you can apply for a paper presentation, for example.
Okay.
It's very useful to do it there, and in the hopes that you will go forward and research a lot more and contribute to medical science, which does not happen as much over here. But that's
Yeah.
always the hope.
Okay. Okay. So that was one long question out of the way,
Yeah.
but the other questions will be kind of hinting back towards some of the answers we gave here. But
Go for
anyway,
it.
just keep your ears peeled. Sorry. The next question we had was kind of this was a question I've always had about med school, because I think even when I'm watching movies or playing video games, just the graphical blood is enough to make me be like, oh, okay, that's pretty gory and that's pretty, intense. I can't imagine how it would be to see an actual real life organ, blood, whatever. So how does med school kind of desensitize that?
That's actually, honestly, that is such a great question, and I'd never thought about it until you asked me. So I think one of the biggest things is when you enter. So I was talking about anatomy, which is the study
Yeah.
of the structure of the body. So
Right.
for anatomy, you every day we used to have this thing called dissection, which meant that you were actually working on real cadavers. Like, these were real people who donated their bodies to medical science, so they were preserved. And you sort of were dissecting it, going layer by layer, identifying what muscle this is, what nerve that is, how you identify these things, for example. And I'm not going to lie to you, it's very difficult in the beginning, and to get used to it. But over time you kind of do. I mean, I think uh, I one of the things which I remember the most about anatomy was we had our viva, and so in your viva they have to bring out new specimens, because otherwise, you would have remembered that gray speck over there is this lymph node, if
Right.
it's something that you've seen every day for like a year. So they brought out these new this ones, and the examiner she used a long pointer, and she would point at a structure and say, what is that? And there was one structure which was of the face.
Mhm.
And I still remember I got like 4 questions wrong because I couldn't get over the fact that the guy still had a beard growing. And, like, that really threw me off. But I think that helps a lot. And, you sort of get thrown right into it. And you can't act queasy in front of this whole group of other people who are there.
Right.
So I think that overall sort of mentality is you mentally toughen up a little bit.
Right.
Ironically, I think the second thing which really helps you is So they preserve the bodies in formalin, and formalin is an incredibly like toxic thing. Like your eyes water, you can't stand the smell. It sticks to your clothes after a while. And I honestly think you're assaulted by that so much right at the beginning that you kind of forget about the things that you're watching and you just try to focus on the smell. Um, Following that, so I was talking about forensics, if you remember, right?
Right.
One huge part of forensics used to be that we had to witness autopsies. You had to witness a total of 10 autopsies over the period of your second year.
Okay.
And that is very difficult to see because I mean, you get bodies which aren't in a great state to begin with. There's no preservation, there's no nothing. So, for example, if it's a burn victim, it's a burn victim. You're looking at it as it is. And I mean, I've come close to fainting several times. I didn't, but keeping in mind that these two things happen. So when in third year you start going and watching surgeries occur, I think one of the biggest things is an operating theater. You is uh, just overall reeks of efficiency and sterility.
Yeah.
It gives off that aura that
Mhm.
everything's under control. You have 8 people here who are very good at their jobs, and no matter what happens, it is under control. And
Mhm.
that sense of control that you get or that you feel over there
Mhm.
is something that sort of calms you down. And it doesn't matter what you're watching, you don't lose it that much. It doesn't
Right.
get to you as much as you know
And an autopsy.
yeah, in an autopsy or during the dissection part of it.
And I
It's just the
feel,
overall
yeah, yeah. I was about to say, I feel like in the operation theater, you're in a team full of talented individuals who have made it this
absolutely,
far, and the patient has a higher chance of coming out alive than has of doesn't. But in the autopsy, you know that the
absolutely.
patient has passed, so there's nothing you
Yeah,
can
yeah,
do about it. And I'm pretty
yeah,
sure
absolutely.
the bodies must be much fresher than the ones you get for the dissection.
Correct, correct. So that's what I was saying. So the bodies in an autopsy are not preserved at all. So for in a burn victim, if they had died of burns within half an hour, it would be on the autopsy table, for example.
Oh, okay. Now coming back to another common kind of a myth, or maybe it's a truth about med school, which is it's firstly very hard. I think that since it's spread out in so many years, it eases it. But I mean, you're the doctor, you tell me.
No, you're right. Actually, that's a very good point. It is because it's spread out over such a long time. So, one thing about at least MBBS, I'm sure it's same. It's same everywhere else. It's very immersive. Like you sort of have to live and breathe that. You end up using medical terminology, while talking to your friends and stuff like that.
Right.
And you spend a lot of your free time discussing. Oh, I saw this today or I saw that today.
Mhm.
At least in your undergraduate. So. It's not just a lot of information, it's like a lifestyle change that you undergo when you're in your mbbs, and it is helpful that it's spread out over a longer period of time, because
Okay.
your mbbs is like your building blocks
Right.
for the rest of your medical career, if you think
Mhm.
about it.
Mhm.
The rest of the time you're just learning new skills, or you're learning new information to sort of expand what you already know. But that nucleus that you get in your MBBS, and that's something that your MBBS is not something that you are exposed to prior to that. The information that
Yeah.
you get in your MBBS,
Yeah.
it's not
I
like the
was
school
yeah.
prepares you for it.
I was about to
Yeah,
say that in the MBBS, you're being plunged into this deep ocean of new knowledge, new experience,
absolutely,
this and that. But say
absolutely,
comparatively to your first year and post graduation, you've been in the medical field, you could say,
exactly.
for
Yes,
5 years. So
yes,
so
absolutely,
it's probably more
absolutely.
fun than the later on years of the medical career because everything's so new.
Yeah. It is. Eventually, like just like I said, you get used to the like watching, seeing blood, etc., etc.
Mhm.
The Over time, the overall, just the incredible this one of how cool what you're doing or what you're watching
Yeah.
is tends to fade a little bit. But I
Okay.
mean, there are still times when you walk out of surgery or you walk out of this one and you say, "Oh my God, I can't believe what I just witnessed." I think In my post graduation, one of the biggest times was when I saw there are these things called surgical robots,
Yeah.
which is this 8-armed machine by which one person controls sitting at a console. And that day I think I stood in the corner. It was a good thing I had a mask on because of OT, because my jaw was just here the entire time. I could not get over how cool this was. And I was 27 years old at that point. So, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine just, and I think that's gonna be, the future, because everything is going technology kind of way. So who knows, maybe the next doctors will be robots.
Yeah, yeah. Robotic surgeons at least. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so that was, I think, the one of the main questions that I had. Another one about med school, or the medical process specifically, is what are some tips, for kids like me listening who want to make it? What are some tips you have that we could use?
Okay, so I would say two things.
Right.
One is more lighthearted, the other one's really boring. The lighthearted one is have fun. These are it's not often talked about, but the friends that you make in your MBBS are people who you will stay with you throughout your life, because you go through so much with them. It's 5.5 years at the end of the day.
Right.
So have fun with it. It's not worth it if you're, like, have fun both in the traditional sense and have fun in the learn to like what it is that you're doing. Like, learn to enjoy the subjects, learn to, like, marvel at whatever it is that you've studied. I
Right.
think that helps him sort of in the longevity of you learning more things and, like, your medical career overall. I think that would help quite a bit.
Mhm.
The more boring thing is probably plan better than I did. I used to go through 6 months where I did nothing, like the notes would pile up. I would go for lectures and not study it later. And then 2 months before the exam, you just do nothing except, spend morning to night in the library.
Right.
So if someone can avoid that and finds a way to avoid that, then yeah, I would say don't do what I did. But yeah,
That's actually a very, very good segue into the next question, which is, how is
yeah.
the kind of work-life balance throughout PG, internships, med school, I mean MBBS?
Okay, so I'll answer that in three parts.
Right.
In my MBBS, for example, the work-life balance was so a standard thing would be that we would work till about 5 in the evening, from 9 in the morning to about 4 or 5 in the afternoon. We used to have lectures or classes or this or that. We used to get a break for lunch, but apart from that, it was all academic. Um, After that, again, it would basically be divided into two parts of my life. Either an exam is 2 months away, or an
Mhm.
exam is not 2 months away. If an exam is not 2 months away, you did whatever you felt like. You wanted to go and play squash, wanted to go and play football, you'd do that. You wanted to go and drink with your friends, you'd do that. You wanted to just watch a movie or watch 3 movies one after another, you would do that.
Right.
When it became exam time, it was finish your lecture, I would take a shower and then head to the library within half an hour. And I would stay there in the library this would go on for about 2 months until the exams came. I would stay there till 11 or 12 at night, come back, sleep, and start again.
Okay.
That was MBBS. Internship, it would completely depend on the department you were in.
Oh.
Uh, so, for example, OBG, in fact, our OBG used to be very, very, very hectic. We would start at like 6 in the morning, obstetrics and gynecology, 6 in
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
morning. It would go on till like 11:30 at night, and then you'd come back and you'd just be so exhausted. Like, there were times when I've fallen asleep without changing my clothes. Like, I would just fall asleep for like 4 hours, then get up, change, fall asleep for another 2 hours, and then go back to work. In fact, our OBG used to be so bad that at the end of the 2 months, when it got over, it was the responsibility of that batch to throw a party for our entire MBBS batch. That's what it would be like. Others were much, much more relaxed. I think general surgery, orthopedics, you finished your work, you would see the postgraduate saying, we have another so many hours of work. Well, after that, we're going drinking. If you want to come, you come with us. Otherwise, do whatever you want.
Okay.
And yeah,
That's
uh,
pretty cool.
yeah,
I
it will be
think.
completely on the basis of your department, the department you were posted in.
Mhm. Right.
Uh, yeah, you were saying?
I think the work-life balance is something a lot of people think is just thrown out of the window the second you enter med school or MBBS, because
Yeah.
they're like, oh, this book is this big, you have this exam, that exam. But I think if you realize how to manage your time well, then you're fine.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
Okay.
just like anything else. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think post graduation, I think more or less you can kiss a work life balance completely goodbye.
Oh.
You spend almost all of your free time in the hospital.
Mhm.
On certain days, you have to sleep in the hospital, or in my case, because our hospital didn't have enough space, I used to sleep in my car. Uh, so yeah, post graduation, it's just work. There's no life, and there's definitely
Oh.
no balance.
Oh
So
shit. Well, I guess you should savor the 6.5 years you have for his 5.5 years before PG, and then in PG just kind of ride the wave. And then once you finish that, then it's fine, right?
then it's fine. Yeah, then it's much, much, much better.
Okay. Okay.
Unless you take up neurosurgery, wherein in which case, your life is going to be problematic again. But we'll come to that later.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So the next question we had was a little question that's subjective to you. How and when did you specifically decide your speciality in medicine? Like, when did you think, I want to do this?
Okay, so it's ironic that I just made a joke about neurosurgery, because for when I was a kid, for the longest time, I wanted to do neurosurgery just because
Oh,
it sounded like a really cool thing to do. Like
right.
you get to hold the brain and everything. And I held on to that for a fairly long time. I joined general surgery because of that. So neurosurgery is a super specialty course.
Mhm.
You usually have to go get a general surgery degree and then write the super specialty exams and then get into neurosurgery.
Okay.
So I held on to that for a very long time until my second year of my post graduation, actually. So I was telling you, we rotate through various departments. I think it was the second day of neurosurgery when I went, yeah, I can't do this anymore. And immediately after that, I had urology. And in neurosurgery, the people were very stressed out. They constantly were just, this patient, we have to, and you could get calls at any time at night. At 40 or 45, if you have to go to the hospital to operate on somebody in the middle of the night as a super specialist, it's not easy. I mean,
Mm.
work life balance absolutely goes for a toss in that case. So I gave up on that idea a little bit. And then I saw the urologists, who were this incredibly happy group of people who were constantly joking around and, like, just making plans. And
Right.
yeah, they used to I genuinely enjoyed surgeries, uh, watching surgeries at that point. And later, when I actually got the chance to do them, I had a lot of fun with urology.
Oh, okay.
So that's my plan kind of changed in between my MS. But
Okay.
yeah,
Right. So now you're planning that you want to study urology, right?
that's right.
Okay.
That
Okay.
is the plan as of now. I'm actually studying for the NEET super specialty exams, which, if you hadn't guessed already, is a competitive exam to get into another degree in India. So
What a surprise.
yeah, what a surprise! Who could have seen it coming?
Yeah, really. Talking about specialties and super specialties, how does kind of we have gone over this question, but we can quickly go by it, which is, how
Sure.
does kind of post graduation compare to an internship or the internship years?
Okay, so I think one biggest thing which I had highlighted even earlier is that when you're in your post graduation, everybody personally holds you responsible for the patients. The
Mhm.
patients hold you responsible for their care because you interact with them the most. You're there with the patient most of the time.
Okay.
The nurses similarly hold you responsible because that is how the system works.
Okay.
Your superiors, they take, so for example, your superiors may take decisions about treatment, but you have to ensure that that treatment gets given to them, gets followed,
Mhm.
that the outcome is looked after, things like
Right.
that. So
Right.
that, like that mental stress of, did I forget this, did I do this, am I doing it
Mhm.
properly? Because at the end of the day, someone's life, someone's pain is on the line, someone's
Mhm.
well-being, future is on the
Mhm.
line, for
Correct.
things that you have to keep a track of.
Right.
So post graduation is much, much more stressful than anything else.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
the pressure on you is really much higher than anything compared to an internship. Because in the internship, right, you said that you're switching around, so they don't expect you to excel at one
exactly.
thing. They just want you to do
Exactly.
everything. But in this, you are meant to be like good in general surgery. So if you aren't, or if you forget something or something, I can understand why the pressure is much higher.
The other thing in internship is that, again, because you switch, right, your relationship with those people is not long term. They know it, you know it. You're going to be there for 1.5 months, 2 months maximum.
Hmm.
So they can't tell you to do long term things. They
Hmm.
have to focus on you taking care of very short term things that have to be done right now, which aren't important enough. Because
Right.
interns usually have this in your internship, you usually have this reputation of being extremely irresponsible because you haven't understood the gravity of your actions yet.
Hmm.
So I
Yeah.
hope that answered your question. I know it's a little long-winded,
No,
but
no, definitely, definitely.
yeah.
Then we can go to the next one, which is kind of speaking about super specialties, which is in this day and age, like when
Yeah.
if I'm studying to become a doctor, would you recommend me to study a super specialty or just stick with a specialty?
So I would recommend. I think it's slowly becoming more and more evident that super specialty is very, very essential.
Hmm.
More so than anything because the patients are starting to expect it. So
Right.
if you have like you were saying, if you have back pain, then who would you rather go to, a general orthopedic surgeon or somebody who specializes in
In
spine
the
and spinal
spine.
surgery?
Right.
So that sort of like general shift in mentality that is making a super specialty more and more essential.
Hmm.
And it's not new. Like, this has been happening for a very long time. There was a time at which just doing an MBBS would settle you for life. You didn't have to bother doing anything else.
Oh.
Then there was a time when just doing a post graduation, being a specialist, would set you up for life.
Right.
Then now it's shifting to being a super specialist. And in fact, in where I was working, the urologist over there, who's a very senior person, told me even right now, even if you do an MCH, that's not going to be enough. You will have to look at doing advanced fellowships, or setting yourself apart. You'll have to build a niche for yourself. So yeah, I think super specialties are definitely becoming more and more essential.
Okay, and I think what you just added at the ending was was a very very good segue into the next question, which is how does super specialties work? How do you go about applying, or not applying, but the exams for that?
Okay, so again, the so you finish your NEET PG, finish 3 years of your post graduation, give your
Right.
postgraduate degree, and at that point you give, again, surprise, it's called the NEET super specialty exam,
Mm-hmm.
which is held once a year. All government colleges, AIMS and PGI, have their own separate exam,
Right.
and it's a similar thing. The only difference being that in your super specialty you have to make a choice as to what specific subject you are applying for.
Correct.
So, for example, if I am studying urology, I have to make up my mind that I want to do urology, because when I'm filling up the form for the NEET super specialty, they ask you what exam do you want to give. So you have to mention urology. So you
Okay.
give an exam which has questions from urology. You have to
Okay.
study the subject that you're applying for.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You have to give an exam based on that, and then again you participate in counseling with other people who are interested in doing urology.
Okay. Okay. And how has it been, like you're in the studying process as of now? How is the resources? How is the is it harder than what you expected, or how is it?
Yeah. I fell into that. I think it's a trap where I thought that, oh, I'm done with PG is the most difficult exam you're ever going to give, NEET, and I don't have to bother about it after that. But no, super specialty is bad. It is very bad. Uh, it's not easy at all. The competition's quite frankly insane. The number of seats are even less. So you have like 2,500 people applying for 300 seats, for example.
Oh wow.
And yeah, that's one of the better, like that's one of the better
Mhm.
subjects. In some cases, you have 4,000 people applying for 200 seats. It's just madness.
Yeah, I can
So
understand. So any of you guys studying to become doctors in India specifically, all the best to you
be
guys.
ready. Yes,
Yeah.
be ready for this.
Okay.
So yeah,
Now,
man.
we spoke about your super specialty, right, which is urology. You wanted to study that. Now we're coming up to the last but not least question. I guess it's the most um, controversial question, but I think it's a question everyone should be hearing, which is what are the downsides to being a doctor? I mean, it's such a noble profession, such a highly looked upon profession, but I know in this world there's nothing perfect. So,
Well, I think the stress is fairly a big part of it.
right.
If you ever, if in your super specialty exam, if you ever, I noticed this thing, I was very randomly, I hadn't prepared well for it. So you can imagine I was trying to distract myself. But most of the guys over there, like about 50% of them were going bald. And, I think that's just a ridiculous, that's what I saw at least at my center. Like the amount of stress that you go through first MBBS and then this, and then at every stage you're writing a competitive exam.
Mhm.
There's no guarantee about, whether you'll do well or not.
Right.
That is one part of it. I think the second is that the amount of time it takes. And this is something that nobody talks about too much, but by the time when you're still in your final year and you've not started earning yet, you're going to see all of your engineering friends get jobs and start buying their parents watches and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and you have to still scrounge together money to buy coffee. So it gets to you a little bit. Even at my stage right now, I see all of these people who've gone to the US and are working, and it hurts a little bit. The amount of
Okay.
time you take, like take so much time to get settled, to get all of your degrees, and then to say I'm going to start practicing right now.
Right.
That is the second. The third thing, which is very controversial right now, but I think it requires uh, to somebody requires to talk about it, is that the incidences of violence. So, like you said, it's a noble profession. I think a lot of people, in me included, get into it thinking you get a lot of respect and you get a lot of this one, which absolutely is true. You do, but the negative instances which arise out of it are a little too many. The
Mhm.
incidences of violence, you getting threatened, and it's not they aren't isolated incidents. It happens to you. It happens to practically everybody,
Right.
almost like once in 2 months, 3 months. For us it used to happen to us almost once in a week. So it is not a nice thing to be subjected to.
So, you getting threatened as in by the patient's family, like saying you have to cure this guy, or how?
Yeah, by the patient's family. This is
Mhm.
one time when this guy and his mother got brought in, and somebody had come broken into the house and assaulted them, and we were treating them, and ends up being a police case. So I have to be very detailed when I'm filling up this particular the details about the incident.
Uh-huh.
So this other guy comes charging into casualty while I was sitting and says, I was wearing my coat and everything. So he points at me and he says, you're the doctor. I said, yeah. And this was, I think, 2 or 3 in the morning. I hadn't slept. I don't
No.
think I'd eaten since breakfast. So comes in and then he says, what happened to my mother and what happened to my mother and my younger brother? You have to tell me, blah, blah, blah. So I sat him down and told me, listen, they're okay. They're stable. As such, there's no problem. We're just treating them right now. So he got very emotional and he says, doctor, if they don't survive, then I'm going to plant bombs all over this hospital. And, you're not going to, I know people who can make bombs, and I make sure that this place isn't standing. So I was really tired, and I think I just continued writing whatever I had to. And I looked up and I told him, look, man, I'm really tired. If you want to blow me up before rounds tomorrow. I don't want to go through that when I'm just sleep deprived. And he was so shocked, he actually stopped and then listened to whatever I had to say.
Right.
So getting threatened was a fairly standard thing for us.
Yeah. And I think definitely another downside that's pretty obvious would be the pressure. I mean, it is someone else's life on the line. That's all your responsibility. I mean, you have a team and everything, but at the end of the day, everyone's as responsible for that person. But I think sometimes these experiences or these one-off occasions really can ruin the image, right?
Yeah, they can. And
Right.
the fact is, it sort of colors your patient in, like, people think that it's a one and done thing, like somebody comes to you, threatens you, or beats you up, which again has happened in cases, and
Oh.
it's done. It doesn't affect you beyond that. But the thing is, the guy, like, you get affected.
Uh-huh.
You then start taking less chances. You start viewing people with a lot more suspicion, and that's only natural. I
Right.
mean, you've gone through a traumatic event. You are going to change your behavior as a result of it.
And yeah,
Uh,
very
so I think that is something that has to be kept in mind these days.
okay. And a last thing we I wanted to touch upon was you said you see your batchmates start earning much before you. So around what age or what process in the medical career do you start earning? Do you start earning in your first year of PG or after you finish PG or
Okay, so actually, when you start internship,
oh
you get a stipend. It's not a lot. So, for
right
example, I used to get 15 grand a month.
okay
Not a lot,
hmm
but you still have that extra little bit of money that you're getting in, that you didn't
yeah
have earlier. It's always a
yeah
nice thing to have. Your post graduation also you get paid. Now the amount that you get paid differs a lot from state to state. Some states start paying you at 25,000 a month, and then in final year you get about 29,000.
hmm
Other states start at 75, and by final year you're getting 90,000 a month.
oh and it also depends on
So
specialty, right?
no, it doesn't. It doesn't. So
It
in your
does.
post graduation, it's a fixed rate. No,
Okay, right.
it doesn't matter. So if in my house in Bangalore Medical College, the amount I would be getting is the same amount an orthopedic surgeon would be getting.
The all the students of Bangalore Medical College would be earning the same.
Yeah, all the postgraduate students. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess that's it for today. Thank you so much, Dr. Archit, for coming on. This was the first
Thanks for
episode.
having
So,
me.
if you guys made it this far, I would really appreciate if you could comment down below some feedback for the next video. And as well, please comment a big good luck and wish Dr. Archit some good luck because he has his exams for urology coming up in the beginning of 2022. And despite all that, he took some time out to record the first podcast episode with me. So I would really appreciate if you could comment some good luck for him and also some general feedback for me. I mean, this is the first video. I'm open to all types of feedbacks because I really want the channel to grow and I want it to be helpful and informative for everyone. So maybe if I didn't specify on this much this video, I could do it in the next one or anything. Just generally the lighting is bad, this that, just tell me. I'll be sure to read all the comments. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you guys learned something from this. It's all for you guys to learn along with me because today I learned quite a lot. So yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video.